And this one is a competitive deck building battle royale. And in this game, each player is going to be starting with a near identical deck, except you're going to be adding in your 2 specific character cards because each player is also going to be playing as a specific character with their own ultimate ability, and each player is going to be starting with their own character board. The board is going to be tracking your health, your ultimate gauge, which is going to be increasing each time you deal out damage, and once that's maxed out, you can activate your ultimate ability. And there's also going to be a track to track your points throughout the game, and that's one way that you can win if you're able to accumulate 5 points. But then there's also going to be a few empty spaces on your board where you can play different skill cards in order to make additional upgrades to your character. But it's not just your character and your deck of cards that players are going to be concerned with, because there's also a main board that players are going to be able to explore, and each player will have a token out on the board representing their character and where they're located on the board currently. And the game plays over a series of turns, with each player having 2 action points that they can spend on their turn, but there are a lot of free actions that you can perform as well, so you can actually do quite a lot on a single turn. Some of the actions you can perform are to move around on the board, but in order to move, you do need to reveal the tiles around you first, and there is an action for that, and it's going to be revealing any of the tiles that are adjacent to the current tile that you're located on, and each tile is made up of 3 hexes. Players can also use an action to collect the resources that are located on that specific tile, and whenever you do that, you do put a drought token on it that's going to temporarily disable any player from being able to take resources from that tile in the following turn. But there's a total of 6 different locations that can be discovered on a given hex, and these can even allow you to do things like trade with merchants in order to gain new cards, or even perform some special specific abilities if you're able to combine a location with a specific card in your hand. But the cards are another place where you can spend your action points, because there's a whole bunch of different cards that you can have in your hand, and they range across 3 different types. There's attack cards that do have a cost in order to play, but they can also deal a certain amount of damage at a certain range, and they can come in either physical, mental, or explosive types. Mental attacks don't need direct line of sight, and explosive attacks can actually have a splash effect. But anytime that a player is attacked, they also have the opportunity to roll their defense dice to try and limit the amount of damage done to them. But other than the attack cards, there's also tactical cards that allow you to perform special actions or effects. And then there's finally the skill cards, which when played, they go directly on your board and can grant you permanent special abilities. Some of these cards might require you to use resources in order to either play them or activate their effects, but having resources does grant you with some other options as well, and most of these are free actions. You can either spend resources to gain anticipation tokens, and whenever you spend these tokens, it allows you to re-roll your defense dice if you don't like the results that you got. Or you could also spend resources to build a shield around your character, adding some additional defense to them. Or you could use these resources to remove cards from your hand in order to try and get cards that you do need at that particular time into your hand. Or you could also spend them to gain legendary cards, which are just more powerful cards that you can add to your hand, and they're much more powerful than the cards that you start with. And then finally, you can use those resources to gain rival points, which, like I said, is one of the ways to win the game. But after each player has performed their actions, that's going to be triggering the end of the round. And there's a few things that happen here, and one thing is really interesting because the main playing board is actually going to shrink. You're going to be drawing one of these cards, and it's going to indicate which section of the board is going to be removed. This is going to limit the play area and cause players to get closer and closer together, which of course is going to make the board more dangerous and trigger more and more combat. Players will then discard any cards that they didn't play and then draw back up to their hand. The game continues like this over a series of rounds until either a player is able to get enough points to win the game, or if they are the last player standing. Really interesting game here. If this one sounds fun to you, you can check it out. I have links in the description below.